I've been gone for a while, and I've had something in my life that I've been wanting to explain my experience because I didn't really see other people talking about this, but here it is. So a few months ago, it's currently early February 2025. In the middle-ish of November, I got a call and it says, this is the Be the Match Foundation. Now, 14 years ago, which was a long time ago, I signed up for what was called Be the Match. And essentially what it is you spit in a tube, you send off your genetic, whatever, genome, to this organization it was called Be the Match. And essentially the idea was that if you're ever matched with a cancer patient who needs a donation from you, then they will give you a call. And so I heard absolutely nothing for years after I did this. I thought I don't know, didn't want me. Because I heard nothing for years. I was like, okay, they must have lost it. Must have not worked out. I don't know. And so now 14 years later, I get this call in the middle of November 2024 saying, you have been matched with a cancer patient. You are the closest match in our database for this patient. And first of all, I was like kind of shocked because I was like, I didn't even, I wouldn't even think that you still have my information 14 years later. I guess I had the same phone number. I have the same phone number. So they were basically able to find me, call me, and say, do you remember? And I was like, yes, I do remember. It was just so long ago that I'm just kind of shocked. 14 years is a very long time. And so it started out with a guy it was a long process. So it started out with this guy informing me that we have a match, and he asked if I was still interested in donating. And to be honest, I didn't remember, like, donate what? Like, I don't know, what am I donating? Like, can you like get me up to speed? Cause I don't even think I knew what I signed up for. To be honest, I was a kid. Really, I was a kid and I just wanted to do something good. But I didn't think about it. I just did it. And so I was like, okay, what am I donating? What do I do? Where do I do it? How does it work? Like from the first phone call, he was like, oh, it's so, this is like, it's so rare to find a match. You might be the only person who, like, in the world who can match with this patient. And he kept like trying to sell me on it, like about how, like, he kept trying to sell me on it. Basically, he was like, it's so important. Like, this patient, you may be the only match. And I was like, are you trying to like convince me to do it? Because I already said I would do it 14 years ago. You don't need to like convince me to do it. I've already said I'm going to do it. I just don't know what to do. And I remember asking him, I was like, do people like, if they get matched, do a lot of them flake out? And he was like, oh yeah. And so I was like, why? And I was like, wow, that really sucks to, if you have cancer and you match with someone potentially, for that donor to flake out for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know, but the way he said it made it sound like a lot of people flake out on it. And I was like, no, I'm not, I'll do it. Like, I just need to know what it entails. I need to know details. And a little background, I have been busier in my personal life than I have probably ever been in my work and personal life. And this has been a really inconvenient time for me. And I've been wanting to upload more videos at the same time, but I am at max capacity. I'm burned out. But I was like, listen, if this person needs this, I'll do it. Like, I'll do whatever I have to do. So they got me on board, and then the process began. So they matched me with a coordinator who basically assisted with the entire donation process. Now, from the beginning or the middle of November, when I got the original call, the final donation was at the end of January. So I guess let me kind of explain. And now, if I don't explain this completely accurately, I'm sorry. Please correct me in the comments. I don't care. But essentially it's called Be the Match Foundation. Now it's called like the National Marrow Donation Program. So essentially the way that it works is that when somebody has a kind of blood cancer, once it progresses to a certain point and other kind of measures have failed, basically the only option for these patients with this type of blood cancer is essentially to nuke, and the blood is obviously throughout your whole body, and so the cancer is throughout your whole body. And so at a certain point, the last resort is essentially to just nuke the entire body with chemotherapy. And because of how intense that is, essentially what it does is it completely obliterates the patient's immune system. That all of that just gets obliterated, totally nuked. Now, the problem is that if they just do that to a patient to try to eradicate the cancer, then they have no immune system. So it's kind of like AIDS, where the HIV virus eats someone's immune system to the point where they can get, diseases that humans normally cannot get. You'll die. You will die if you have no immune system. But essentially, you have a cancer patient who, if they don't have an immune system, they're just guaranteed to die. And so what they do is they plan to nuke the patient with the chemo, and then the donor donates their stem cells. And the hope, if it succeeds, is that essentially their body takes the donor's immune system, basically takes their immune system, and then it becomes their own. I was talking to the nurse during the donor day, and it's actually really crazy because if, like, for example, the donor and the patient have a different blood type, then the recipients, the patient's blood type will change to that of the donor. And then if their body accepts it, their entire immune system becomes their donors. It's basically a last resort to try to save the patient's life when all other measures fail. So that's what it was described to me as. And I was like, okay, what do I do? How do I donate this? Is it like, is it like that plasma donation people do, or how does it work? They had to initially treat me like a guinea pig. I had to do like 4 or 5 different lab testing things in order for them to test my personal health, to make sure I wasn't going to be at risk from, I'll get into it, but the medication they were going to put me on, make sure I don't have any kind of like viral diseases or any kind of immuno issues that would complicate things. Basically, they had to schedule like 5 different I think it was really 3, but 2 of them screwed up. I had to do them twice. One time I went there and the appointment was for a certain time, and I got there and they said, "Oh, we might not be able to take you for 2 hours." And I was kind of pissed, to be honest, because it was during a work day. And I told my coordinator that, like, I literally have no free time. Like, I do not have free time. If we can do weekends, that's when my days are most open. But like between this time and this time, I'm in and I'm out. And if I'm not out by that time when I have to go, then I'm walking out. They're like, "Yeah, we might not be able to take you for 2 hours." And I'm like, "Well, I have to literally be gone within 1 hour." So I had to walk. And so then another time it was a blood draw where they got a bunch of my vials for a bunch of different testing. And then I got the results, but they were like, they wrote like my birthday wrong or something. And then they also wrote like something else wrong, like my name or something. And so they were like, "We can't validate these results as yours because of like an error on the what the nurse filled out." So I had to do it again. I think it was like 4 or 5 times in all when I had to do blood donation. I had a bunch of physicals, and basically like the first month and a half or so was basically going into Christmas. It was just a whole bunch of tests that they were doing on me. Some of them, I had a nurse come to my house, or they sent a nurse to my house, which was nice and convenient. But essentially the first month and a half was just a bunch of testing. Now, going into donation week. So during this time, they're testing all these different things, like your markers. They do, so the first call is that you're like an initial match, but then they're testing my own health. But then they're also sending my results to the patient's doctor to look at the match, to get their assessment of am I as close as possible to matching, which means ultimately the donation going successfully? Because if you have someone that's like 98.5 and then another one who's 98.3, then you want to go with the person who's the absolute closest. So after the month and a half, basically it's like you're constantly proceeding to the next step. And after the month and a half, it was like, yep, it looks good. Like you're a good match. It looks like we're doing this. And then essentially it comes down to the patient's ability to do the process. And so the patient's doctor, and he's a man. I did not get a lot of details. He's older than me. It's blood cancer. I don't have a lot of details beyond that, and I don't really want to like share someone's personal information that I do know because it's not my information to share. But as far as I know, we are not relatives, like closely or distantly. Even our ethnic background is a little bit different. So after, I think in the beginning of January, about a month and a half later, the patient begins to get ready to receive the donation and to do the chemo. So by, I think, early January, we had a good idea of when the patient was going to be able to begin the protocol to receive the donation. And then I had a date scheduled. It was for the weekend in the end of January. Oh, and one of the things is only certain locations in the United States can do the donations. There's Washington, D.C., New York City, and then like Seattle or something. One of the things is that I don't like flying anymore, to be honest. I'm not like afraid of flying. I just don't like to do it. Okay, I'm a little afraid of it. But so, you don't actually know what facility you're going to be donating at until like, I think it was like a few weeks before. And so I was really hoping for Washington, D.C. or New York City because those are within driving distance of where I am. And like I said, I don't want to fly, didn't want to fly. I think by the early January, I had an idea that they said, okay, we have you scheduled for the New York City location. It's a few hours away. So I was able to drive. I would be able to drive. The process going into donation day is 5 days before the donation day, they start you on a medication. It's an injection that a nurse came to the house, and 5 days before, and then every day up to the donation day, they inject you with. They inject you with this medication. It increases the white blood cells in your blood. And throughout those 5 days, your white blood cells throughout your blood just increase. And then the day of, your blood is so full of white blood cells, then you sit down and then they draw the blood and they filter out the white blood cells. So there's two different donation processes. One, which apparently is in 90% of donations, is essentially a blood. So they put the injection in one arm and then another injection in another arm. Like I said, they give the medication, increases your white blood cells for those 5 days. And then on donation day, you're sitting there with these things in your arm and it's basically it depends on the time, but they estimated like 6 to 8 hours, basically where you're sitting there and they're sucking the blood out of you. They're spinning it in this machine to centrifuge to separate the white blood cells. And then they put them in a bag, which I think I have a photo. I'll show it, but it's pretty nasty, but it looks like a strawberry mixer drink, but that's your white blood cells. It's basically your immune system. And then what they do is they filter out the blood that has been filtered out, and then they insert it back in you. And then for like 6 to 8 hours, they're just constantly sucking your blood out, spitting out the white blood cells, and then putting the blood back in. The quantity of how much was filtered, it was my whole body, like 5 or 6 times, I think, was filtered through, of the blood removed, filtered, put back. That's how much quantity was withdrawn and put back in over the 6 to 8 hours. Now, the other option is essentially where they tap into your hip bone. And this is not what mine ultimately ended up being, but it got me real nervous because they said basically you have to go under anesthesia, which I also don't like, where they tap this thing into your hip bone and then they suck out your stem cells like from your hip bone. It just sounds so disgusting. And basically you're like in pain. They said it feels like you've fallen down the stairs or something for like a week. So I was like, okay, I really don't want to do that one because I don't like anesthesia. That one sounds a lot more gnarly. And so I ended up, the patient's doctor kind of determines which one is best for the patient. And then you just got to go with whichever one they need. 90% go with the one with the blood draw. That's what mine was. They just take them out, filter them out, put it back, and then they have that immune system they can put into the patient. And mine were actually flying somewhere, so like I think they freeze it or something. It's good cold for a couple days apparently, and then they immediately fly it to the patient, and then I guess they've put it in him. So the the injections for 5 days of this medication, they kind of make you feel exhausted. I felt fatigued. It really wasn't bad. I mean, the problem was that like, so I think I started my injections on Thursday because I think my donation day was the Monday. The Monday before, I had actually just gotten in. I'd flown in from Florida from a work conference, and I think, which first of all, I flew in on American Airlines into Reagan International Airport, which is the one that collided with a helicopter and crashed like literally days afterwards. So I'm like flying home, like paranoid about something happen. I'm on American Airlines flying to Reagan, and that happens a few days later from an AA flight flying into Reagan. I'm honestly never flying again. America is collapsing. I'm sorry, but I don't trust anyone with my life. And so at this point, to be honest, so I was really kind of putting myself out there with this donation. Part of the donation process is they have to get like consents, and they're talking. So they were getting the consents for the medication that they inject in you to increase your white blood cells. And it's like they go through like every possible bad scenario. And one of them is like, I don't really want to talk about this in detail because I don't want to scare people, but basically like spleen death or something, or spleen rupture, fatal spleen rupture. And they're like, do you consent to this? And I'm like thinking like, I don't really, I don't really want to do this. To be honest, throughout the whole process, I didn't want to do it. To be honest, I just didn't want to do it. Kind of freaked me out. The whole thing freaked me out. It was really inconvenient at that time in my life. I'm a lot more squeamish than I used to be. And so, I'll do blood donations and things like that, but they just still gross me out. Like I look away, like from my arm. I'm like a baby. I don't look at it when they do it because it's so gross. Most of the common symptoms are bone pain. I think that's the one I experienced myself. I'll talk about in a second, but they were going through like the worst case scenarios. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, I better not die from this. This would be like, like I'm trying to do something good. And dying from that would just be really, man, that would be like just cruel irony. That Monday when I flew back home, and then like I said, that coming Thursday I was starting my injections. I got some kind of cold, like on the flight. People were like coughing like nasty on the plane. I don't know what's going around in Florida, some nasty thing. Nobody's covering their face. Nobody's wearing a mask. Everyone's just like coughing everywhere, just absolutely gross. Nobody has manners anymore. And lo and behold, I get home and I get like this cold and I'm sick that Monday, and I'm starting this donation on Thursday. So I'm kind of like, I don't want to have a sickness and then give a cancer patient this sickness, this cold or flu or whatever I have. So I'm like calling the coordinator being like, what do I do? Like, I'm okay. I mean, it's just a cold, I'm not too worried about myself. I'll recover, but I'm starting these meds on Thursday. I don't know if I'm going to be okay by 1 week from now on Monday. And so I'm feeling like crap. Like, honestly, I'm feeling like crap the whole week going into that Thursday. So Thursday, I start the injections. It seems like I'm okay to donate, but I think on the day before Wednesday, they had me go in for more blood tests I was tested for like COVID, flu. It was all negative. The doctor said it was probably just flu. It wasn't that serious, but I did feel like crap and I was coughing. I was just like not in like peak health to be beginning my donation process. So going into like Saturday and Sunday, I started to experience a weird thing like like, sometimes when you stand up really fast, like blood rushes to your head and you're kind of like, oh, you feel that tension or whatever. I started feeling that in like the center of my abdomen. And I got to tell you, if you have health anxiety, I would recommend maybe not doing this because like it's pretty gross. You got to, there's blood involved, donation, there's the medication. I started having this like tightness in my chest when I stood up. And so I was like, okay, what is this? Like, I Googled, like, where is your spleen? And your spleen is like on the bottom left or something. And I was like, okay, no, this is not on the left. So my spleen's not exploding. So I'm okay. But what is this? Why is like, it was like in the middle of my, like, right in the middle of my abdomen. And it kept happening for a few days. And so I think it was like a day and a half before I contacted the coordinator. I was like, is this normal? It's been happening pretty much every time I stand up, like from laying down to stand up, or if I'm sitting down to standing up. On Saturday, the doctor called me and I was just kind of like explaining what I was feeling. I sent her a picture of my of my chest, my abdomen, like where it was, and she was like, I think it's rib cage bone pain. And I was like, okay, well, like location wise, that makes sense. And she's like, just keep on, keep an eye on it, let me know, keep me updated. And so then, like that night, and then the next day, the pain had actually spread throughout my entire. Oh, there's a cute dog. The pain had spread throughout my entire rib cage every time I stood up, and I think on Saturday. So my donation day was Monday. So Saturday night. So after like 2-3 days of beginning the medication, the pain, like when I stood up, it felt like every single one of my individual rib cage bones was being squeezed like a tightness. Like it was literally like being squeezed. And one, I was glad because it wasn't just like in my, like it basically confirmed what the doctor was saying, that it was probably the rib cage bone pain. And it had actually at that point spread throughout the whole rib cage area. So a lot of people experience it throughout a lot of regions in their body, but I didn't. I think once I felt it in my neck when I was like laying weird once. It's like a weird pain that kind of feels like I don't know, like a tension or tightness in the bones. And then my low back, like I guess my hip or my low spine, I don't know. One time I was laying and I felt it tight there, but I did not, and it wasn't even that bad. I just kind of felt it, just kind of like a discomfort, but I didn't feel anything other than that. And then the rib cage. So I was like, okay, it was just kind of weird because I had the pain in the rib cage bones. This was just like my mind wondering what was going on. I'm like, let's just get to Monday. Let's get to Monday. Let's just finish this out. They recommend having a companion because you're not going to be able to lift more than 10 pounds after the donation. I also brought my dog because I wanted to. So we all went up on Sunday midday, drove up, and yeah, and then spent the night at the hotel. They put us up in everything, by the way. NMDP pays for all expenses. You don't get paid to do it, but they pay for all your expenses. So like the, mileage, the gas, the tolls, the the hotel, all of the expenses, they pay for all of that. So I was really having the rib cage tightness Sunday, but I knew what it was, so I wasn't too concerned about it. Monday, the day of donation, yeah, basically, I went in. There was another guy there. His name's Grant. He was there with his brother. His brother was his companion. He had just had a newborn 3 weeks prior. And so it was just really inconvenient timing for both of us. And we were just kind of like laughing. We're like, well, here we go, and they actually sat us next to each other. Me and Grant, we donated next to each other. It was really nice because I thought it was going to be alone. Like I was going to be alone during this kind of gross, weird donation. And we kind of like talked the whole time. You're laying there, they insert the needle into the one arm, the other needle into the other arm, hook you up to the machine, and really you just sit there for the entire period. If you have to pee, what they'll do is I didn't drink before because I knew like I don't want to be in the awkward situation of having to get the thing put out and then put back in, or having someone pee for me, or like in a cup or whatever. Grant actually did that. He had to pee, so they like closed the like blinds or whatever, the curtain, and then they like lifted his chair so he was like vertical, and then they like held it while he peed. But anyways, so during the donation, you're basically sitting there, and then yeah, I was basically just talking to him. We were just kind of talking. His brother is a software engineer for Reddit in New York City. So we were just like talking about all kinds of things. He was buying a new house and just a lot going on, but it was actually kind of nice. And this is kind of gross. The needle that was sucking the blood out actually started to clog after about 3 to 4 hours of sitting there, and they like couldn't get it to keep sucking because the blood was clotting the needle. It was just it started to get very gross, and they were thinking I was going to be out by 1 o'clock, but they had to like take it out, and like you could see, and I did look. I try not to look, but I was just kind of curious, and I was looking, and you could see like the clot, like it was like stringy, very gross, and so it was clotted. So then they had to like try to like put in a new needle or whatever. They put it in, but then it was just clotting so much that they couldn't do that one. So they had to switch to another vein on the same arm, and it was just very bloody and very gross, and just I was like, oh my! So it added time, like probably an hour in all, to my donation time. So I sat there and I was done by 2 o'clock. So it was probably like 9:30 to 2 o'clock, however long that is. They said estimated 6 to 8 hours. That's, I guess, about right. And so, yeah. And then I was done. So yeah, that was my experience. I would encourage you guys sign up for the NMDP Be the Match program. Um, I'll leave the link below. I would totally do it again. Honestly, it hit me at such an inconvenient time. Honestly, I'm grossed out by all of this kind of stuff, and it really wasn't bad. And this kind of donation of your stem cells, it's the last resort for somebody who has this kind of cancer. It's literally the only cure. It's the last resort. And so if you can actually match with someone, you can literally save a life if it succeeds. I don't know whether my patient, I don't know if it worked. I'm probably not ever going to know. I don't think. I kind of don't want to know, because if it fails, that's pretty depressing, to be honest. And I'd rather not know. But I know some patients and donors become friends, and it's a nice thing, and it's kind of cool because like it's someone who has your immune system, which is like a very like, I don't know, it's kind of, you guys are similar, and it's, I hope it goes well. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but join the registry. They make it easy. The coordinator completely accommodated my entire life. And so I would, I'd recommend it. If this video can get just a few people to sign up and, save even one life, that would be pretty amazing. I would strongly recommend signing up for it. And if you're a match, then that's awesome. You should do it. Sign up for the Be the Match Foundation National Marrow Donation Program is what it's called now. They changed their name. And yeah, if you have any questions about it, let me know. I tried to give like my raw experience about how it actually was, and I will tell you, I don't want to do it, frankly, but I'm really glad I did, and I hope it works. And I think more people need to sign up to do this, because really, you are the only cure. If you're matched, you're basically at the point where you are the only potential cure.